Good evening, everyone. My name is Yitz Epstein. I am the life coach at the Psychological Healing Center. I'm your host for tonight's show, and I am replacing Dr. Judy, who is away with a family matter. And welcome to Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud. This is a call-in show, so please give us a call with your questions and comments. The number to call in to the show is 323-843-2826. And tonight's topic is guilting and shaming as a narcissistic control tactic. And before we jump into our topic, I would like to go over the mind map system that Dr. Judy created. The mind map system is designed to identify childhood wounds, to calculate the emotional reactions to those childhood wounds, and then identify the belief system that was created in childhood. This is the past. So the first three panels are the past. The next set of panels are 4, 5, and 6, which is the present, which is what happens when we are wounded, when we have psychological virus, we have psychological poison in us, and it leads to chaos, defenses, and breakdowns in the present moment. And the point of the mind map, the system's goal, is to reach the last three panels, which is 7, 8, 9, which is paradigm shift, healing, and connection. And this is more present moment and future oriented to heal from our illnesses of the past and our childhood wounds. And just so everybody knows, if you don't know already, we have 2 narcissistic abuse meetups. One of them is a webinar, and one of them is a live meetup in Sherman Oaks that takes place every other Sunday. So this Sunday we will be having it. Each of those costs $9.95, and the webinar starts at 3 p.m. and the group meetup is at 7 p.m. Each of them is an hour and a half. So if you are struggling on your journey from narcissistic abuse, please reach out and join us for that. In addition, the Mind Map video series is still on sale and will continue the sale. The fee for that is $195. Down from $595. So an excellent deal there. Please feel free to take advantage. It comes with the book, it comes with the journal, and Dr. Judy goes through the entire mind map system in video form very eloquently, in a wonderful tool that you own and can use throughout your life. So to begin, the topic, like we said, is guilting and shaming as a narcissistic control tactic. And I want to begin by discussing the difference between shame and guilt. And there is a difference, even though they are at times used interchangeably. Shame is an inner feeling, sense that you are worthless. It's intrinsic to the self. So it is not separate from the self. It is, I am worthless. I am unworthy. Guilt, on the other hand, is I have done something that is maybe unacceptable, or that doesn't reach a standard that's been set. And this is there is some distance between the person and the guilt, as opposed to the shaming or the shame that is experienced, which is very deeply personal. So this applies to narcissism because the narcissist, or we call it the narcissist, but the narcissistically injured person. Looks like we have a phone call. Is that correct? Oh, we don't. I'm so sorry. So the narcissistically injured individual will be riddled with an intense shame, a core shame, that is something that is very, very uncomfortable to live with. And there are several techniques used in order to sort of pacify this very deeply shameful, painful feeling. So those who are in close proximity to somebody who has a narcissistic injury and is narcissistically abusive will be subject to the shaming and the guilting of this narcissist. And we'll dive into how it's done and how the narcissist is able to relieve themselves of this inner shame and guilt. But to continue about the narcissist and how this shame why the narcissist is so riddled with this very deep core shame is because developmentally they have been either abandoned, they have been wounded, rejected, abused, and their inability to be attuned and mirrored and connecting to primary caregivers is going to create a very helpless feeling, a feeling of disconnect, a feeling of abandonment, of humiliation, and ultimately the child will be forced to really lick their own wounds and not properly be able to process these very deeply painful feelings. the child will then create a certain sense of the reason why this is happening is because I am unworthy, I am unlovable, which ultimately creates a psychological prison where the child feels there's absolutely no way out but to just stuff down these feelings, deny them, ignore them, and eventually, if they decide to perpetrate, put these on other people and force them to experience these very feelings. So to continue, I want to discuss some thoughts that Dr. Judy actually wanted me to talk about on the show. Her and I were having a discussion about the mechanism behind the way the narcissist is able to use shame and guilt as a weapon to do great damage, not only on a personal level, relationship dynamic level, but also even on a family level as well as community, and sometimes even globally, really. So Dr. Judy wanted me to discuss the idea of the narcissist being able to tap into their victim's belief system, their core belief system. When a victim is under the pretense that they are unlovable, the narcissist wants to tap into this, or not good enough, or any core belief. The narcissist wants to tap into that core belief, and the way they do it is by studying their victims. They want to get to know their victims. They want their victims' trust. And then when the victim opens up about their core beliefs or their thoughts, and may not even open up about the core beliefs, but the things they talk about, the things they care about, will eventually reveal those core beliefs. And the narcissist is then in control. What they do is they own this information and will be able to create a certain maybe dialogue or expectation or aura around the victims, where the victim feels that maybe they're kind of led in a certain direction by maybe the narcissist will decide that if they do that, they essentially create a relationship around the core beliefs, and really the narcissist is not invested in this relationship. They are just pulling and pushing on the core beliefs, leading this individual in different directions. So identifying core beliefs within yourself is a way to protect yourself from this, because if we are vulnerable and if we are trusting with our core beliefs and we don't know ourselves, then we are open to potentially people tapping into those core beliefs and manipulating them and moving them. And when the narcissist does have this information of the core beliefs, it is going to be essentially they're going to understand that they're going to essentially see that the victim is weak, and this is where they're weak, because their core beliefs are really deeply rooted, and they can kind of push the trigger whenever they decide to trip up these core beliefs, these negative core beliefs, and shame, and make the individual feel extremely shameful. And to go into a little bit more detail of how this is done, and how the narcissist plays why and how the narcissist plays the shame game, and this is an article by Julia Hall. The reason, first of all, that they play it is to project their own inner shame, to externalize their own self-hate, self-loathing, and as we discussed a little bit, it makes others feel inferior, which then makes them feel superior. And by controlling other people's perceptions, you really can control this individual. And the buttons that the narcissist is able to press on the psyche of the victim through these core beliefs is quite literally like pushing buttons on a computer, which is quite disturbing. But ultimately, this is what happens when the narcissist, who doesn't have empathy, just simply is using the victims to control them and make them feel worse about themselves, and ultimately hide and discard and remove those inner feelings of shame. So I do want to remind you guys, this is a call-in show, and the number to reach us is 323-843-2826. And like I said, please feel free to call in if you have any questions about shame and how the shame creates really destructive really destructive habits. Victims of narcissistic abuse are riddled with shame, as are the narcissist, and there are ways to work through your shame. It is a feeling. It is not intrinsic to who you are, as much as it does feel like you are extremely innately unlovable and feel shameful. This is something the narcissist designed. He created it, or she created it, to keep you controlled and in place. So it is definitely more than possible to work through the shame. We have a call-in, so please, what is your name?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome. What is your
Hi.
name?
Pardon me?
Hi, welcome to the show, and what is your name?
Manya.
Hi, Manya. Thank you so much for calling in. What's your question or comment on guilt
I
and
was
shaming?
I was so surprised. I'm doing the mind map series and I'm really, really enjoying it, and actually just kind of survived the panel 6, and I'm on to 7, thank goodness. But I'm surprised when you said tonight that the narcissist is riddled with shame, because I know I have been, as somebody who has a narcissistic mom and also my ex-husband. But I'm just so surprised. I never really saw shame as something that they expressed.
Yeah, well, they do a fantastic job of covering it and making the victim feel as if it is their shame. They're disowning it. The personality disorder is designed to remove these feelings. It is a false self. It is a more of like a sort of like a aggrandized rock hard shell that they live within, and then they deflect against their true self. So I mean, themselves they're running very, very far and fast away from their shame. But this is rooted in deep feelings of shame. So there's no question they are motivated highly by avoiding anything that reminds them of their shame.
Wow. I mean, I never saw, not that I mean, I'm waking up more and more as I'm going deeper into the mind map series. Like I'm becoming like more, all of a sudden more aware of things that were so far deep out of my awareness, like feelings and, places where, yes, I was being manipulated where I didn't see it at all. Or I mistook that deep feeling sense of shame as that I really believed that I was intrinsically unworthy or unlovable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm so happy that you're doing the mind map and that you're enjoying it. And really what we want to do is the mind map is designed to get some clarity, because when we identify with our feelings, we have a very difficult time of seeing how our people, are separate from this shame and from really any feeling. And it makes sense, because when you've experienced the same feeling for so long, based on the fact that maybe our entire childhoods or relationships that last 20, 30 years, we come to believe that this is who we are, and it becomes difficult maybe to kind of disidentify and separate from those very feelings. But that is the work of getting clarity, because when we have clarity, we have a better chance of seeing what's actually going on. And what's going on is that you were made to feel this way, and we need to start like you've seen, you're starting to work through that and realizing that the feeling is not who you are. That's how we begin to kind of separate from what the narcissist is giving you.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm so impressed and so surprised too that it's a very clear system to be able to move through and into a place of peace and more ease and more freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful system. I obviously am in love with the system, and am very blessed to work with a wonderful team at the center that Dr. Judy trained, and obviously she created the system to help people through these childhood wounds. It's a logical system. It makes sense. It's not. You don't have to trust us, and in 10 years from now, after doing therapy every week, if it doesn't work out, we'll try something else. And it is more like, does this make sense to you? Because there's always a cause. The symptoms that we have in our daily life are not random. If you study it long enough and you self-reflect enough, you'll realize that everything has a cause. We just have to find out what it is so we can take ourselves.
That is such a relief. What a relief. What a relief to be finally figuring out the cause of some of these things that just seem so distasteful in myself,
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very effective. Shaming and guilting is wildly effective. Narcissistic abuse is people do it because it works. And ultimately it works because the victim gets hooked into a cycle of accepting the feelings. The narcissist is constantly checking in on, how much of my shame are you going to accept? How vulnerable will you be to me? and slowly but surely they download this negative information, these negative feelings into you. They are not yours. They are very much given to you. This happens in childhood, like you mentioned, having a narcissistic mother. After enough time, especially because we're looking up to mom, and children are extremely vulnerable to parents, especially ones who are trying to abuse and download these negative messages. They are going to download them as if this is who they are. This is how we identify. Really, we build an identity based on this.
It is a dungeon of darkness, isn't it?
It is,
but,
absolutely.
I'm in the group too, and I really look forward to it on Sunday, and I thank you for making it so affordable. That's incredible. What an experience. Because it's amazing to be with a group of people who get it, because most people wouldn't really believe it, and there's so much shame with this that I honestly wouldn't share it with others anyway,
Right, exactly. And you want to, and we have another call in, so I want to make sure we can get everyone in.
Thank you for all the time.
Of course.
I'll be listening. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for calling in.
And thank you, Yitz, for running the group, too. It's just wonderful.
My pleasure.
Bye now.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for your support and calling in. And I want to jump into this next call. So hi, and thank you so much for calling. What is your name?
It's Dr. Judy.
Hi, Dr. Judy. Thank you for calling in. How are you?
Mr. Epstein, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's so wonderful to hear from you. And, I hope I don't completely take over your show. I hope it's okay if I...
It's okay. It's okay. I just wanted to tell the audience how impressed I am with your ability to absorb the mind map. And I really wanted to thank you publicly for all the people that you've helped. I know a lot of people who are listening are part of your narcissistic abuse group, which I so appreciate because you're extending yourself to people who cannot afford mind map therapy, and you've really been a wonderful support for many. And I just wanted to say thank you and how important you are to the team.
Well, Dr. Judy, that's very, very kind of you, and I'm honestly honored to and humbled to work with you on a daily basis. It's just the system you've created is really needs the compliments, because that is how to reach people. And I want to thank you, and obviously thank you for the compliments, and thank you for calling in.
Yeah, of course. So enjoy the show, and audience, I'll be back, and I have all the confidence in the world that Yitz will answer all your questions. So please call in, and this is an epidemic. And this is the kind of thing where it's so subtle that some people don't even know what hit them until many, many years later, as we know. And we get so many phone calls from people who have been injured at the causal level, as we refer to it. And it's not like being necessarily beaten or it's not the kind of obvious abuse that we can identify. It's much more subtle, and I think, yes, you really do have a talent for helping people through it, and I know how passionate you are. So I just wanted to thank you for being part of the team and doing this kind of work, and it's an honor to have you on the team.
Wow, I'm so grateful and thankful for your support, Dr. Judy, and to many more years of helping people. You're right, it's an epidemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for the audience, I just want to say, everyone, please pay forward the Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect book. It's free. You can get a PDF copy of it. And just forward to all your friends and family, coworkers, bosses, congressmen, principals, teachers, everyone. And our real intent is to get the word out and to help people to identify wounds of childhood and how to morph out of them and heal.
Yes, please. It's a free PDF. Obviously, the mind map that Dr. Judy, you so eloquently articulate in your book. And it's just, please reach out if you would like to read that and get started on your healing journey.
Absolutely. So I'm going to let you take over the rest of the show. And audience, please call in. He is truly a gifted life coach, and do challenge him. I think he's very capable of taking on your questions. So with that, I'll let you handle the show, Yitz. And thank you again.
Of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Judy.
Okay. Take care. Good night.
Take care, Doctor.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
You so much.
Talk to you next week.
That was Dr. Judy from Dr. Judy WTF, in case anyone was wondering. And obviously the mastermind behind the mind map system, which we work with at the Psychological Healing Center. And like she said, please reach out. Free PDF. I mean, just shoot us an email, read the book, send it to whoever needs it, whoever is struggling from narcissistic abuse. It is very insidious. This form of abuse is almost impossible to detect based on the very intellectual and very sneaky, insidious methods used. So please spread the word. The Psychological Healing Center, there is help out there for you. There's help out there for people who are suffering, and there is no need to suffer. There's healing. There's light to help you through your journey. And like I said, please call in and with questions and anything. Even if you want to share something you are going through, we'd love to hear from you. And okay, so shame. What is shame, and what makes it so dangerous? Shame is this is an article here that discusses the shame, a concealed, contagious, and dangerous emotion. And I do want to talk about how dangerous shame is, because it is, to me, one of the most destructive forms of abuse, and it's one of the most toxic feelings we could have as human beings, really. Shame informs you of an internal state of inadequacy, dishonor, or regret. And we talked a little bit earlier about what shame does, and how it's not something we can just run away from. We feel very deeply connected to this feeling, and we start to identify it if we don't properly deal with it sooner rather than later. Basically, shame is one of those feelings that, like the earlier caller discussed briefly, that we don't even want to share our shame. We are ashamed that we have this shame. We feel like we're not going to be understood, and we tend to hide it. This becomes a massive problem because shame is very, very toxic. It suffocates the spirit. It makes you feel like you are disconnected, that you cannot have human connection. The antidote to shame, and I believe Brené Brown, who is a world-renowned expert on shame, discusses how the antidote to shame is vulnerability. So human connection requires vulnerability. If we are not vulnerable, if we are not safe, comfortable within our own self to be vulnerable, we are going to disconnect. We are going to isolate. We are going to defend ourselves. We're going to protect our territory because we don't feel very good. We feel like maybe somebody's going to take it because we don't feel confident in ourselves. And this is really mostly rooted in the feeling of inadequacy and that we aren't good enough. And what we do is, unfortunately what happens is if the shame is not processed and dealt with, we tend to want to put it onto others. And like we said, this becomes a little bit of a self-soothing agent. When we can disown it, it ultimately, we don't have to deal with it. We have our victims dealing with it. The scapegoat child is usually the one who takes on this shame and tries to make things right in the family unit. But ultimately, it really destroys the self-esteem, the sense of self, and the sense of confidence within the person that has this type of shame. And when someone feels shameful about themselves, it is not uncommon. I mean, it's usual that they do not want to be seen. They want to isolate and disconnect because if they're found out for these shameful feelings or whatever they feel shameful about, then they are going to be exposed. So what shame does is it makes you feel that you can't reach out. It becomes a dungeon where not only are you feeling terrible and isolated and that you can't be heard and understood, but then you are forbidden to even talk to anyone about it. This is what needs to be addressed if you are on your healing journey in order to really heal truly. And we have another call-in. Welcome to Dr. Judy WTF. My name is Yitz, and what is your name?
Mary.
Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for calling in. What's your question or comment about shaming and guilting?
Well, so I have a pretty textbook experience. I think my mom is a psychopath. And I'm really kind of revisiting her as a person, and really reanalyzing everything. And at the same time, I've recently started to pursue a restraining order against her. And I guess I'm sort of like at a loss for like hearing about people who've had this experience. And I guess I'm struggling with advocating for myself and being kind of like, I guess I've basically been learning about how she's contacted a lot more people about me than I ever thought. And I know that I'm scared of asking these people, like, did my mom contact you? And if so, what did she say? And I know there's a lot of shame there, but also like fear of like having no ability to respond to whatever they say because she's so good at it. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And that's very typical. We call it a smear campaign. And it's designed, there's a specific purpose of it. It's because when you cannot control a person, you control how people perceive them. And then, again, it's another form of really narcissistic abuse where you are able to kind of do away with your own shame because, well, look at them. They're the shameful one. Another deflection, another projection. So what I'll say to that, and what I would not suggest, but I would really resonate, is that, you know, this stuff, you can't control how people perceive you. If they're going to believe her lies, they will believe her lies. And ultimately, they're not respectful and intelligent enough to do some digging or question, well, why is this person telling me random information about, why are you speaking this ill about your daughter? So ultimately, you know, what I'd say is do the work within yourself, try to heal and try to stay strong within your authenticity. Don't lower yourself.
Well, right. But so she can't, for instance, she ordered a wellness check on me just to harass me. And I was talking to my building manager for my apartment, and she just casually mentioned that my mother had contacted her. And she contacts my employers. Like for over a decade, I've had to keep my employment a secret from her because she'll contact my employers and people and even my building manager to express basically like her, you know, her fake concern that I'm like maybe a disturbed person who maybe should be evicted or who maybe should be terminated or not trusted as an employee. So like, it's, you know what I mean? Like She has no limits.
There are no limits.
Definitely, you know, she wants to take me down, you know?
Yeah. And your awareness of that, of what's going on is super important and key. Because, you know, it's also important to trust yourself. If you feel like there's something going on, if you feel like she's trying to take you out, yes, chances are she you know, when you can't control the individual, sometimes you just want to destroy them because you figured her out. The last thing a narcissist needs is somebody figuring out their game. They want to avoid that at all costs. So, like I said, you know, you can't control how people see you, and I understand the struggle on many levels because it's unbelievably unjust. But ultimately, when you stay within your authentic self, you do the healing work, you focus on yourself, and you realize that other people are going to say things. It is what it is. I believe that eventually, and again, this is a belief because it may or may not, but I believe that eventually people will start to see the truth about what's going on. And they'll see that it's strange that somebody's running around and telling everyone about their daughter. That would strike me. If somebody told me about random information about their kid, especially derogatory like that, I would definitely, if I had any form of, you know, kind of trying to understand what's going on, I would kind of question that and see that as a red flag. So ultimately, I'm sorry you're experiencing this, and you should not have to go through this. This is your mother that's trying to destroy you and call it and take you out, like you said. So stay strong, and yeah, thank you so much, you know, for calling, and I really wish you so much well. And please reach out if you'd like a PDF of Dr. Judy's book. You know, when we do the work on ourselves, we're less worried about other people because we're confident within our own, really, who we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any advice on like how to like inquire like with people in a way that's like less embarrassing? Like, you know, it's just such a strange thing to approach with people, you know?
It is. It's uncomfortable because now you have to run around to everyone you've ever met and ask them, hey, did my mom contact you? I would suggest taking
because it automatically gives people a questionable, experience of you. Like your own mother is doing this to you. Like maybe there's something wrong with you, right?
Yeah, and that's the dangerous nature of it, and that's the injustice. You don't want to run around and fight it. Battling with a narcissist is one of the worst ideas because the battle is the game. Fighting is the whole point.
Yeah.
You don't win a game that's rigged. It's a rigged game. So do what you can to get space, take care of yourself, self-care, self-respect, hold on to your authenticity. You know the truth. And ultimately, if you can live soulfully and in your own conscious with knowing that you're in the right and that you're doing what you're supposed to do, really respecting, you're not going to, engaging in the fight will really bring you down to their level. So there's no winning that. But like I said, try to stay within yourself, stay whole, and don't lower yourself. And eventually, hopefully, it'll come to light what's really truly going on.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for calling in. All right, so I want to jump into a little bit of how the narcissist does what they do. There are very much playbook, but there's techniques used that are pretty universal, pretty general from what I know and from what I've seen. Every narcissist, every abuser will have their own spin on it, but everyone's really following a little bit of a playbook here. And here are some of the most prevalent techniques used. And they're usually very insidious, very undetectable, and virtually deniable completely, 100% deniable. So a couple of different methods used are to, first of all, they want to break your confidence. They want to lower your quality of self. They want to make you feel like whatever you've done, your accomplishments, aren't really that great. They really are they're mediocre. Maybe what they'll also do is maybe show you, okay, my accomplishments were just better. And this does a very, very good job, especially if they're trusting you. If the narcissist is being trusted, this does a wonderful job of doing a number on their victim because it really diminishes their exciting parts of life, their high, they're really their celebratory experiences. And by hijacking those highs, you really, first of all, you put a damper on this person's excitement and their sense of accomplishment, which really, if the victim doesn't catch on, they will then turn on themselves and say, yeah, it really wasn't a big deal, and maybe even start to feel badly about themselves because of the accomplishment wasn't really as great as it as they felt. And let's see, a couple of more tactics are talking down to you. They'll take almost like a righteous viewpoint, and they'll say, almost like a voice of authority, like, oh, I am this, or even the tone they use is very, very condescending, very demeaning, very devaluing, and it works. It really works to really hurt the victim and make them feel like, wow, my viewpoint is just so mediocre and so insignificant next to this super righteous and informative and a knowledgeable individual, when this may completely not be the case. Let's see what else. There's blame shifting, which is if you try to come after them and tell them you did this wrong, you will somehow be the cause. You will be the root. Sometimes the explanations are brilliant, and sometimes they're sneaky, and it leaves the victim saying, "Wow, yeah, I guess it is my fault." Usually they'll find one subtle thing to explain why it's your fault, one mistake you made, and they will shame you and blame you and make you feel terrible because you shouldn't have made that one mistake. And this specifically becomes horrific with children because children make mistakes. That's just what they do. And it's not as much of a mistake as it is a learning process. So by the child making a mistake and then being made to feel that the mistake was the reason why they're being berated by the narcissistic parent, it does an absolute horrendous job and devastating job wounding on the victims, which ultimately creates a wound and shame in the child, who will then, in many cases, continue to fight to do it right, do it better next time, do it right, don't get it wrong. And this cycle of running after the approval creates more humiliation and more shame, where the child or the partner is running and running and running after a carrot on a stick, but ultimately they do not get there, which is part of this technique. It is designed to string you along, to control you, bring you away from the truth, from your authentic self, and use you, or the victim, as a narcissistic supply. So definitely a horrific and very effective control technique. Let's do one more technique. I would say, okay, so first impression, narcissists, they usually look fantastic. They know how to walk the walk and act the part. They've worked very hard on this. This is because they're aware that first impressions make a very big deal. They allow the victim to create a mental construct, which is usually created within the victim based on the projections that the victim creates from seeing this first impression. So what you have here is you have a victim who is living under the pretense of this first initial impression, but all the meanwhile, the narcissist is not operating out of that first initial impression. They have actually been acting, and they're really operating out of a false self, which is where they continuously manipulate the victims, confuse them, create incredible cognitive dissonance, and ultimately mentally destroy victims who are very confused and are always blamed for the confusion, deflecting any form of understanding to the true cause of the blame, the person who is shaming. So those are some techniques and tactics. And if you are struggling from core shame, if you're struggling from trying to recover from narcissistic abuse and you cannot get distance from this shame, it is pivotal to do this work, because unless we do, we will unfortunately sometimes, more often than not, be attracted to people who make us feel better about ourselves and soothe our shame. Nobody can soothe your shame, because your shame is not your shame. It shouldn't be there. We need to work through it and get it out, at least toxic shame that is very destructive. And if you are struggling with narcissistic abuse, please reach out. There's a team of staff, myself included, Dr. Judy, and a couple of therapists and a doctor, 2 doctors actually, who do mind map therapy. And this therapy, this specific technique, modality of therapy, from what I have experienced myself and with patients, has been wildly effective in helping people get clarity and work through these very intensely deep, painful emotions. There is healing. There is light. There is a life that is not full of doubt and confusion. You deserve peace and happiness, but we got to do the work, and working through the shame specifically, which is usually at the core feeling that doesn't allow us to move on and to live from a place of comfort and authenticity. Let's see. So shame essentially is like we said, it's a feeling of extreme low self-worth, unlovability, not sure if that's a word, but unlovable, feeling like you are unlovable, and feeling like nobody will love you, nobody will accept you, you are not good enough, and nothing you do will ever be good enough. And it really freezes up the individual. It really doesn't allow them to feel good and the confidence in themselves to continue to live from their authentic self, which is spontaneous, which is making decisions. It really cripples the ability to really live life. These feelings of shame are really truly devastating, and the consequences of shame include several different really life altering and destructive experiences, and a few of those are anxiety, pervasive anxiety. If you are nervous about what other people will say about you because you are unlovable, and what other people's opinions of you they might find out, of course we're going to be anxious. We are not going to be comfortable with other people, and therefore we're going to be anxious. We're not going to be comfortable really in our own space. We're not going to feel safe within our own skin. In addition, there will be self-hatred. You will hate yourself, and if you don't have a reason to, you'll find a reason to. You'll scapegoat your any flaw, body shame. You'll shame a part of your body that you don't feel like is perfect. You'll shame a flaw, a character flaw. You'll find a reason to validate this shame. We want to work through the shame because no one deserves to feel shame, or I should say no one who's not actually a perpetrator deserves to feel this shame. So another symptom here is withdrawal and secrecy. Like we mentioned a little bit earlier, you're going to want to run away. Why would I want to talk to anybody who might be someone who will catch on to my secret? I will want to withdraw. I want to isolate and make sure that no one comes close. I'll create extreme barriers and be safe, and really not connect. There's no connection in safety. Yeah, you'll be safe in your head, in your aloneness, but that is not a recipe for fulfillment and happiness, because that doesn't really allow us to connect, which ultimately the mind map system is designed to heal human disconnect by connection, human connection to our inner self, connection to other people. When we isolate, we don't truly allow ourselves to connect, as much as it seems like we're safe and we're not actually experiencing the shame. So it's important to work through the shame so we can connect to other people and connect to ourselves, which is true health, and connecting to people who respect each other, us, our boundaries, don't judge and invalidate your experience simply for being a human being. In addition, symptoms from shame include fear of intimacy and exposure. If you're going to be close with somebody and you feel terrible about yourself or shameful about yourself, you're going to avoid that at all costs. Like we said before, isolate, disconnect. As human beings, we're wired to connect. We want to be connected to others. So if we're running away from people, well, why is that? If naturally we're meant to connect to other people, even if you're a loner per se, okay, maybe you don't want to connect all the time, but 20% of the time there is a desire to connect. We all want that. We want to be close. We just want to be close in a healthy, happy, fulfilled way. So if you were running away from intimate relationships, this is certainly a consequence of feeling inadequate and unworthy and unlovable. Addictions. Addiction is a very, very strong factor in, shame is a very motivating and strong core factor in addictions, because addictions, if you can go ahead, Ryan, pull up panel 5, please. Addictions is panel 5. Panel 5 is defensiveness. I'm disconnecting. So if I'm addicted, I have my pleasure source, I have my drugs, I have my alcohol, I have my codependency, I have my safe space where I can get high or I can disconnect and feel great. But ultimately, these are short-lived, and when they drug and the disconnect and the defense mechanism decides to die down, which it always does. That is how drugs work. That is how defense mechanisms work. They only work for a while until they collapse into panel 6, which is ultimately clashing. But if we want to feel, addiction is another form of another manifestation of I don't feel good. I don't feel good about myself, and therefore the addictive qualities are going to offer a sort of solution to my problem. Ultimately, they don't solve anything. They take us farther away. We end up feeling shameful about having addiction. And of course, this is not to blame anyone who is an addict. It is a struggle. It is an extremely, extremely difficult battle to fight. Anyone who's struggling addiction. But ultimately, we want to work through the shame, because when we don't, we are prone to turn to things that are not truly healthy. Self-destructive habits, self-harm. If I am unlovable and I am unworthy, then I'm not going to be nice to myself. Why would I be nice to myself if I'm not a nice person or not good? And of course, this becomes a battle because we don't want to self-harm, but ultimately it's a battle, and we will engage at times in self-destructive habits if we feel virtually shameful and unlovable and unworthy. We certainly will feel a certain escape by destroying ourselves and maybe creating a sort of equilibrium where we say, okay, well, if I'm not such a great person, I don't deserve good things in life. I don't deserve to be happy and to feel like I'm like connected. And then we don't give ourselves the things we truly do deserve in life. Everyone does deserve to be happy and fulfilled. we will those suffering from shame will have extreme anger, anger turned inward, which will be depression, anger turned outward in the form of exploding and hurting other people. Shame is going to create that, because shame is there's no expressing it, there's no letting it out, there's no letting the poison out. So what we end up doing is we end up either self-destructing, like we mentioned, internalizing it, or externalizing it, projecting it, and pushing it onto other people in the form of angry outbursts and rage, which is usually attached to the shame. Core shame, when that gets triggered, we feel angry, and therefore we may destroy and hurt others with our anger. Dislocation from one's feeling or authentic self. So this could be seen as disassociation, living out of a false self, ultimately not accepting who you are unconditionally. It's self-rejection. We are wanting to get rid of these feelings. We don't want to identify with an unattractive, unlovable, unsuccessful human. So I don't want to feel innately flawed. Therefore, I'm going to either push these feelings, push my authentic self away, and that's where you see narcissism. Narcissism is, I will operate out of a false sense of self, and anyone who it represents my false self, my true self, will be the owner of the feelings. I will find victims who are willing and not, maybe obviously unconsciously and unaware, but they will take on these feelings, and that's where you have narcissistic abuse, where the perpetrator uses these techniques to live out of the false self, and then disconnect from the negative feelings onto the victims. You'll see oftentimes perfectionism. If I can just get it right, I will not feel this shame, and it becomes an inner critic that berates the victim and tells them, or sometimes even the narcissist as well is operating out of an extremely harsh inner critic, super ego, that does not let up. It does not go away, these invasive, profound feelings of not being good enough will motivate a person to strive to be perfect, whatever perfect means, whatever standard of perfection we choose. Ultimately, if we chase perfection, we never get there, because perfect changes from minute to minute based on how we decide what perfect is, but ultimately, because it's not perfect we're searching for, it is acceptance, it is self-love, it is to not feel the shame. So perfectionism is certainly an escape and a way of defending against the shame. And lastly, we have underachievement and sometimes overachievement. Underachievement will be, well, why would I try to be accomplished or successful or good enough if ultimately there's nothing I can do to feel good enough? And you'll see extreme underachieving. You'll see talent wasted. You'll see people who don't even try, who succumb to a life of mediocrity, when deep down there's true talent, there's true a future for individuals. And we see how for these individuals, and we see how absolutely devastating this is to the human psyche and the spirit and the mind when we feel shame. And at times we'll overachieve, we'll become a workaholic, we'll run after achievements and degrees and success and promotions, and ultimately we never get there, because it's not about the symptom, which is or I would say the defense, or the running after. What we're doing is we're really running away from facing this core shame. So, okay, fair. Yeah. Okay, so we don't have that much time left. I want to quickly jump into doing our song. And I do want to say thank you, everyone who joined us today. We are grateful for your support. Please reach out for a free PDF if you're struggling from any form of abuse, disconnects, childhood wounds. Please reach out. There's therapy. There's help for you. So how much longer do we have? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.